So, everybody, we're here with one of our very dear friends, Cynthia Sue Larson, for another exciting conversation. It's always so great. We never know where it's going to go, but we do know for sure that we're all the better for it. And I know that you guys share that attitude with us. We've heard it from all of you. So, we're here with Bill McKenna. Hey, Bill.
Hi there.
And Cynthia. Cynthia, will you just reintroduce yourself to everyone?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my background is physics originally. I got a physics degree from UC Berkeley. And more recently, I've been investigating mind-matter interactions having to do with consciousness, quantum physics, and I love where the fields of spirituality and science come together. So I've been helping people as a spiritual life coach for 25 years and publishing a free monthly newsletter, Reality Shifters. And that's my website is realityshifters.com. And I'm also an author of books like Quantum Jumps, Reality Shifts, High Energy Money, or Advantage. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and if I could give anybody any advice, go get those books. They are really uplifting, really amazing, and they will change what you believe about yourself and about the world around you. So grab those. So
Also, those are available on Audible
Audible,
because
Oh,
yeah.
I've got them all. Click, 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 click on Audible. Thank the good Lord, baby Jesus, for that because I need Audible because that you made it accessible for all of us.
yeah, that's true. And it's so good if you're on a drive or lots of times you just want to listen to something and a book is perfect. That's a good point. Thank you.
It's true. Speaking of hearing things, recently Bill was listening to something, and I don't know, maybe I shared that video with Bill about something that really perked our interest. So, Bill, do you want to ask Cynthia your question?
Okay, so Cynthia, you know what? I've listened to, I can't even tell you how many of your books because I have a lot of time in the car and you're my favorite author.
Oh,
So I get to listen, and one of it was kind of in a few different areas. I heard you talking about that we manifest in our peripheral and that reality bending or the type of things that you talk about where the malleability of the quantum is in the peripheral. I'm paraphrasing and putting my own words to it, so please correct me. But t- I know there's more to it. I just couldn't. I the content, not enough of it was there. So fortunately, we're getting to have this call today. So if you could tell me about what you mean about reality and manifesting and dimension shifting in the peripheral.
this is such a good question, Bill. I'm so glad you asked it, and it gets to the heart of, I think, any kind of manifesting practice, whether it's law of attraction, a lot of people are into that. I've been approaching it more from the quantum jumping side, but these are similar, they're related. And what it really gets to the heart of is in quantum physics, the difference between the wave and the particle. And I'd like to, if I may, just quote a quick, very short excerpt from a fabulous book by some very serious scientists. I'm quoting Jerome Busemeyer and Peter Bruze. I'm just going to say a sentence, really short. They say the wave nature of an indefinite state captures the psychological experience of conflict, ambiguity, confusion, and uncertainty. The particle nature of a definite state captures the psychological experiences of conflict resolution, decision, and certainty. I'm just going to pause there, just let that sink in. What are they saying? And these are not just average scientists. These guys, they wrote a whole book on quantum cognition and decision making. So what they're saying with lots of quantum physics equations in their book, heavy duty stuff, but they are serious about it. And I love the way they approach this. They're basically showing with lots of research to back it up that our brains, and that by that I mean not just the neurons in the head, but also in the heart and the gut, everywhere, um, the sentience that we are, we are employing quantum processes when we're thinking, when we're making choices, when we're choosing between realities. And I would, of course, put my radical optimism spin on what they just said. So they're focusing on some things where I wouldn't tend to go. However, they bring up the right idea, the uncertainty. I would say let's make friends with it, and how good can it get? To me, these doorways to the unknown could be absolutely amazing. And it's up to us to keep our imagination in that onward and upward trajectory. Can we take it somewhere else? Sure, we can, but let's keep it. How good can it get? And then the decisive point of a particle state is something that's very manifest. These aren't just the only people talking about it, though. I'd like to give credit to the Hopi Indians real quick. They talk about tunatya, which is, it's like the wave function. It's the becoming, it's the manifesting, it's the being. It's like what's in our heart, what we're really loving. And then tunatyava, which is now it's manifest. Here it is. In a physical form, we've got what we were intending. And then David Bohm, the physicist, he talks about the implicate and explicate order. So I'm putting all three of these ideas side by side by side. And I'm just saying these guys are all talking about the same thing. They all deserve credit. And yes, it's real. And how do I notice it when I'm working with clients and myself and so forth? I can actually perceive when I move between specificity of that particle state into high sensitivity, high sense perception, where I just open it wide up and I'm not judging or anything, then I can sense these parallel realities right there. So there's my, in a nutshell, answer, and then we can unpack it as you like.
So, will you break it down to like kind of the layman's terms? Are they saying that it's when we're not looking directly at it or searching for it, that it's off to some part of our brain or mind or reality that's just at the edge that we're not actually being aware of?
Yeah, it's like that. It's like things are constantly shifting, and we are natural beings. We tend to go between locking our focus on something and then going into a daydream state, and then locking our focus and daydream. It's kind of like walking. It's like you're moving your foot through the air and then it lands on the
Hmm.
ground. So it's each step you take, you're walking into another world. Every time you're moving it, you're going into that wave state of all possibility. That's another analogy. It's not exact, but it gives you an idea, feeling for it. Absolutely.
Well, that is kind of true. We're always drifting between our almost daydream, like you said, our imaginary, our internal world. And then we're reminded by sound or somebody trying to get our attention or a physical thing that we have this direct focus. Oh, yeah, there's something that we call reality that's literally right here. And then, even in the middle of that, we might drift into this more dreamlike state, imaginary, where we're floating around in the past. A lot of us do that. And the work that Bill and I do, we know that trauma pulls us back. What I mean by trauma is an experience that our nervous system deemed a threat. So we'll be wandering around in that, like as though we could fix it, repair it, or just relive it, checking for the threat again, or somewhere in the future, right? Sometimes there's a threat in the future we're worried about. Or if you're a radical optimist, like Cynthia Sue Larson, you're, reimagining something that happened in the past that could have been way different, or in the future, some amazing thing that could be happening. But in between all of those, there is this return of focus that does feel like it's right in front of you. You have to engage your frontal vision is to see, yes, I'm actually in 2024, on January the 8th in this call. So is that it? Is that really what we're talking about? Is that flow between states?
Yes, it's basically locking in attention. It's the attentional ability that we have to focus our conscious agency on any given moment and recognize that we are in that space, sharing it in some capacity, whatever level of self that we're recognizing. I'm bringing a lot of things in here all at once. I really am a big believer in levels of conscious
Yeah.
agency. And this is one of the key, in my opinion, the key ways that you can lock in a desired reality with something like the quantum Zeno effect by just observe, 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 like gratitude, gratitude, gratitude,
Mhm.
gratitude. And then you start locking something in through an affirmation or a gratitude practice, and you can start starting to feel relaxed. Like this is something that's a new normal. This is where I am. I'm not gonna lose it. So it's kind of like tapping your foot. A lot of people that are autistic, they'll tap, 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 tap. They're locking in a reality with that repetitive checking. It's a very fully embodied sensory movement, and it really can help to lock in that quantum Zeno effect, which is
So
interesting.
you're talking about bringing the imaginal into the focused,
Yes.
into the now, bringing it out to in. And that is where it begins, is in those peripheral imaginal states. Am I
Yes.
getting closer?
It's what's constantly happening. It's a natural process. It's like, when are you inhaling? When are you exhaling? Most of us don't notice. This is tunatya, tunatyava, implicate to explicate, particle to wave. We're doing the dance all the time. Like when you're walking, like when is your foot on the ground? When is it moving? I don't know,
Right.
but it's a flow and we're in it.
So we had a particular reason for this specific curiosity, and there are no coincidences, right?
Right?
And it's interesting that you brought up autism. So this summer, I visited one of our practitioners who's a speech therapist, and her clients are people predominantly with autism or developmental disabilities. And those that have the most severe of these problems are her clients. She's been using cognitive movement with them with some really great results. However, what we noticed is their focused vision really is only available for a really tiny window of time. So, you know how we move a ball and we have the eyes track, and we can move how the brain is functioning with that movement, eye movement. Well, they could maybe move for a 3-second period track, and then actually they would fatigue. The brain would fatigue, the body would fatigue. So it would be for her a series of catching the eyes, but they couldn't really track for very long, even though she was making really great strides. So she wanted to know, how could we serve them better? So I went to observe, because that's not the clientele that I see or that Bill sees on a regular basis. We've seen autistic children, but very mildly, and those that their eyes could track. So these people, some of them are running around the room screaming during their physical therapy session, hitting people, fighting, trying to claw their way out of the room, and really, really traumatic. So one of them he's 30, and his mom would say he's incredibly intelligent, but he had no real communication. Communication is done through a tablet in which they take a stylus and they press letters. So they can spell and they have full language, but nobody knows how they really got it, because they don't sit down really for a lesson, never have.
Yeah.
So communication is her focus. And if they could get them to sit long enough and focus long enough and be able to use the hand independently without any support, that's communication. And now people would believe that that person is actually communicating.
Yes.
Problem is that with any support on the elbow or hand of the typing, there is the perception that the therapist is actually doing the typing.
Right.
Okay, so that's the setup. So the job was to see if there was a way into their what seemed like a very locked, very closed system, right?
Yes.
We could only get in for seconds at a time to move the vision. So I was questioning the mom about him, and she said he wanted to be a minister because all of his siblings were ministers. And I thought, I wonder if that's a projection on her part. I didn't know. But she also told me that when she helps him type, that he types what's in her head. She said that doesn't help this whole setup at all, right? That would make it seem like she's influencing. She said, but I'm not influencing. She says, and I tell him, you get back in your own body, you get back in your own head, and you type, right? She says, I know I sound crazy. I'm like, not to me.
No.
So we'd also done a BioWell test. where we can see the energy of the body and where it's moving. And we've never seen anything like it. He literally there's a center column, which is, in your own field.
Mhm.
There's a column that's outside of that, that's outside of your physical body and more into your field. We call it a field of potential area. He was beyond that. He was
Wow.
in what's the red zone, all to one side, completely aligned, but completely outside the body. So all of these things came together in my mind. And earlier in that day, you'll love this, Cynthia, I was talking to Colby, and we'd seen one client, and we did some really great things. And I discovered some things about how to reach him. I said, wow, we did some great work today, but I really want more. I really would love a magic wand. And Colby says, but Liz, you have a magic wand. I said, yeah, I know. I want a better one, right? Just kind of to no one in particular. So that this is right before the session. So I'm just thinking about him being outside of his body and the vision. And all of a sudden I got the idea, what if I don't have him look at the ball?
Mhm.
What if I ask his brain to see it without looking? Because I already know he's out here somewhere, right?
Yes.
And what if I work just in the field of vision that I know he could see in, that's still within his 6 to 8 foot field around his body,
Yes.
and not look like a square? We don't work in a square. We never work in a square, Bill and I. It's always a figure eight. It's always an oval or a figure eight, but do it in a square. So I walked in the building, I tested it on 2 people that were there who had, a more traditional neurological setup. And they were like, whoa, that was something. Okay. So I asked Owen, the boy at Rickworth, I said, Owen, would you be willing to do an experiment with me? And his mom had told me he was very, very sharp and he loved science and he loved the scientific method. At that point, I didn't know if that was her or him. But I said, would you be willing to do an experiment with me? And he cocked his head and pushed the button for yes right away. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. So we had a therapist stand behind him and hold him because they didn't know if he would hit me or what he might do.
Mhm.
But he was very willing. And I said, Owen, would you let your eyes just gaze? I want you to let your eyes rest because I realize how fatiguing it is for you to look at the ball. Would you reach for the ball with your brain and see if you can see the ball? So I moved the ball in this square pattern slowly, asking if he was able to see it, and, a slight nod, yes. And I think it was the second pass, Cynthia, it was the most amazing thing. He collapsed, just relaxed, melted
Mhm.
into the caregiver that was holding him.
Gosh.
She's looking at me, and I'm looking at her. And I do it just a few more times. And Owen, we said, Owen, would you be willing to type? And he literally raced for the keyboard. Normally you have to drag them. And he said, I can work my arms and legs together for the first time. What he was saying was, and nobody knew this, I don't want to move my body like that. I don't want to run around. I don't want to scream. I don't want to punch people. I don't have control over it. But for the first time, I can move my arms and legs in concert. So when we did the BioWell again, he was back in his body.
Wow.
So it was just the first flicker of something that changed the face of the work that Bill and I are doing. As we do, I brought it home to Bill, and now we're back and forth expanding this. But one of the things that we discovered in using the method, all of us now practicing this seeing with our brain
Yes.
in our whole environment. Now some of us can see in 360-degree panoramic view, not 360, while driving,
Yes.
Well, and it expanded our brain to such a way that many people are starting to see blue lights in their vision, sparks along the edge of that periphery. And that it does seem like there's a very interdimensional shift that happens when you put yourself in that perspective. So when Bill was listening to you, he said, I don't know, but I'm wondering if Cynthia has discovered some part of this, some reasoning. The other thing we know is that it starts to allow the brain to make its own new connections faster than anything else. And for these autistic kids, and we work with 10 clients over 3 days with miraculous results, and their brain actually making their own connections. At the end of each session, because the focus is speech, each of them was actually speaking while they were typing, saying the word or letter out in advance, speaking in sentences. And then there were some that had no language before that had started typing all kinds of crazy things, very interesting things during those sessions. So we were curious about the connection between those two things. We know that there's a function of the peripheral vision, but what we say is reach with your brain, because when we say reach with your periphery, the brain shifts into something else. It's like it's trying to see with that function. If we say reach with your brain, everything relaxes and you're able to expand the reach physically. So we were just so curious about what are the possible connections. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'm just gonna interject. It's about 3x. When you look with your peripheral versus look with your brain, some resistance goes away, and it looks about 3 times greater. That your distance, like you can have somebody looking here, this is the edge of what I can see with my periphery, and now they're way up here, that type of thing. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but important detail.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Does it seem like there are overlaps in what you're talking about? And
yeah, this gets super interesting, because this gets into the idea of these reality bubbles or Wigner bubbles of that each one of us tends to, without noticing we're doing it, having a subjective creation within the sort of dream that is reality. In other words, this is basically a simulation. What? Wigner, yes. That's Eugene Wigner. He's a physicist. So he was the guy that was noticing that do you remember Erwin Schrödinger?
Yes,
with a cat in the box. Okay. So Erwin Schrödinger has this cat in a box, a hypothetical cat. No cats were injured or harmed for this experiment. The cat is placed inside of a sealed box that nobody can see what's going on. But inside the box, there's a vial of poison. There's a radioactive decay mechanism, which is really, truly a random number device. So it just sort of at some random moment, based on radioactive decay, which is a quantum process, it will randomly, perhaps maybe or maybe not, trigger the little hammer that breaks the glass that releases the poison that kills the cat. So then the impossible situation, which is the reason Erwin Schrödinger came up with the experiment, is to say, okay, this is ridiculous. You've got a cat in a box, and you're saying that the quantum particle that's maybe leading to its demise is in a superposition of states. It's either, already triggered the poison vial to be broken or not. It's fine to say that for a quantum particle, but now because they're entangled, you've entangled the situation. You've got the cat in the box. That means that cat is now part of that quantum wave function. That means we're saying the cat is both alive and dead. That's ridiculous. So he's the guy that was saying that. That's Erwin Schrödinger. And now along comes, if that wasn't freaky enough, which is pretty freaky, and that has lots of implications. We're not going to get into everything. But now Eugene Wigner, Eugene was a brilliant physicist also, and he made many contributions to science. One of them was to say, okay, that's pretty weird, but what happens if an observer is observing the observer? What if you stack up observations? What if you, and I love it because, I love the mathematician that came up with the whole idea of calculus. That's Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. I'm a big fan of his, and never mind about that. But it has to do with stair-stepping the levels of conscious awareness. So I'm all about conscious agency. What level are we at? Who are we involving? What's going on? Okay, well, now you've got one observer observing the cat. Maybe it's alive or dead. They open the box, they find out. The observer observing the observer. This gets pretty trippy. They can see both. They can see the observer opening the box and it's dead, and opening it and it's alive. Where are we now? What kind of truth bubble are we in? And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm not going to get this, I could go real into the detail, but to keep it simple and for our purposes, I love it. You're talking about the periphery versus the mind space. And it seems like these are access codes for people to really recognize that you can go beyond what you yourself are seeing. You have permission to start, like, take another big step back. Take another big step back. I always love another big step back, because then you can always observe more than you thought you could. And we do that through meditation. You found some keywords now to really open that up for people. And what are they seeing? They're starting to see the shared reality between these bubbles of these Wigner bubbles of reality. So you've got one where someone feels trapped and their arms and legs don't function, and someone who really would love them to experience, I know what it is to move my arms and legs together. Let me share my bubble with you. Come into your mind space. Let's share. Let's play. And it starts to open up. And man, you guys are on the threshold of a huge awakening here.
Well, what happened next down the road a ways? We started to utilize this in with our concussion set, because we work on people with concussion quite a bit. And we started to work in this realm around the body that and ask the brain to reach. So, we use the colored ball with the stripes, of color. And so we started to hold the ball in a position where the periphery or the mind had to reach, and asked, could the person see the color on the ball without looking? What we discovered, that people who were severely concussed, it might be black here. There's nothing there, right? Or they would see the wrong color altogether. And then after several times of having them look, all of a sudden the right color shows up. So interesting. A lot of times when they'll see the opposite on the color wheel. So they're looking at green, but what they really see is red, or vice versa. That was fascinating.
Right.
Then we realized that if we had them slide their eyes and look, actually bring it into focus and try to touch in that place, that 9 times out of 10, they actually didn't know where the ball was. Their depth perception in that area was completely wrong. So combining, having them actually be able to see the color and then turn their eyes. First of all, the eyes would turn and they'd be like, I thought the ball was over there. I saw it, but I didn't know where it was. So then touching, we add the kinesthetic. After about 3 times of that in a position, all of a sudden they see the color. They can touch it. They know where it is in space. And things start to change in how their brain is working around that concussion. Mood changes, life changes, ability to actually see changes. So we discovered that there's a lot about the brain that the brain uses in this area around that we're not looking directly at.
Yes.
And then there's all of the kind of more metaphysical aspects, where it appears as though we can shift reality in those zones as well.
Absolutely. And I want to cite the work of Walter Friedman, Jr., not the senior, not the guy that did lobotomies, but Walter Freeman Jr. He's passed away now, but he was with UC Berkeley, and he was tracking this shared mental space between people. A little bit, it sounds very metaphysical, so it was of great interest to me, of course. And then there are other scientists that have looked into that a little bit, but I think it's starting to open up. I'm starting to see the shared state of consciousness being studied by researchers. So it looks like you guys are on the cutting edge of it as practitioners, but there will be, I think, some evidence to support what you're seeing. And it's so much bigger than people realize, because as you know, and as I was referring to just shortly, briefly, we do have neurons in the brain. We've got them in the heart. We've got them in the gut, and we've got them spread throughout our body. And then even more so, there's this mentality that's outside of the physical being. So how do we bring all this together? And it's kind of a mystery. And what is our true identity? These are things that aren't adequately addressed in the science that I studied at physics, classes at UC Berkeley and even beyond. It seems like we have barely scratched the surface of this. And I would love to see a lot more research being done. But it's, again, you guys are right on that front edge that,
Well,
that
it really shifted the face of what we
mm,
are doing. We don't exactly understand the brain science, and maybe nobody does yet, you know. We've reached out to a lot of doctors and things, but what we do know is that it is radically shifting what's possible in terms of what a person can see and can't see. We're finding that even Bill experienced that people with color blindness, that is starting to shift.
whoa,
Is that not crazy?
love it.
And lots of other things. But before we move on, Cynthia, I'm wondering, could we take 2 minutes? And I wonder if you'd be willing to just have a little experience.
Sure.
Would
Love
you?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a way we figured out how to adapt it so a person could do it for themselves, because moving the ball through your own field doesn't really work because your arm knows where your hand is, right?
Right, right.
But what I'm about to show you, it's something that all of us started to practice, and it actually, you can kind of use that as a meditation. But the biggest thing it does is expands your peripheral, your ability to see without looking. So I just want you to
Mhm.
experience it, and then you can share what it feels like to you. Would you
Okay.
be willing? Okay,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
2 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
so what you're going to do is you're going to let your eyes drift just above your computer screen. So if you just gently look at something kind of in the directly in front of you, and it's just a soft gaze. Like for me, I'm looking at a cabinet right in front of me. You
Okay.
just don't want to look right at me because that gets weird.
Okay.
All right. So just let your eyes gaze. And then begin to be aware without looking of the wall directly to the right of you. Just take a big deep breath. This is a super relaxation. Then be aware of the wall to the right of you. Now begin to notice if you can see where the ceiling and the wall come together at the top. Yeah. And then just let your attention, without looking, let your eyes gaze into the distance, but let your brain reach to that wall and scan the wall from the top to the bottom. And when you get to the bottom, hold for a second. Take a big deep breath, just let yourself relax. And begin to be aware of that corner where the wall and the floor meet. And begin to notice the floor from the right to the left, under your feet, and all the way to the left wall where the floor and the wall meet. Yeah. Just notice what it feels like to be aware of what you shouldn't be able to see. You're not looking at it. Notice what it feels like to be aware of the floor in front of you and the wall to the left. Now begin to notice that corner of the wall to the left on the floor, and let your brain reach for the wall from the floor to the ceiling on the left. Noticing how you're aware of what's on that side without looking. Good. And let your attention scan all the way up to the top where the floor and the ceiling, the wall and the ceiling meet at the corner. Good. And just be aware that you can fully see that corner without looking, where the wall and the ceiling meet. Now begin to let your attention run from the left ceiling corner across the ceiling above your head to the right. Let your brain reach for the ceiling from the left to the right. Okay, now that you've had the experience, we're going to move just a little faster. Reach to the right, let your brain scan from the ceiling to the floor on the right. Move quickly from the right floor all the way to the left floor, noticing that you can see everything in front of you and beneath your feet. From the left floor, move all the way up the left wall to the top of the wall and the ceiling, and then begin to move your attention from left to right across the ceiling. Good. Now come back to just above your head, above the ceiling. Good. And see if you can be aware fully of the right wall and the left wall at the same time. On a big deep breath in, just let your brain reach. Good. And now begin to notice if you're also aware of the ceiling above your head at the same time and the floor in front of you at the same time. Good. On a big deep breath in, begin to notice if you can see the ceiling, the walls, and the floor all at the same time. Good. Okay, that's it. That's the basic experience.
That's super cool.
What did you experience physically?
Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. It's oh man, I don't even know how to describe it. It feels a little bit like if you have an energy healing, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a sound bath or get a Reiki treatment, it feels like that. There's a great expansion going on, real activation of all of my like it's like everything's tingling, like but in a good way, but relaxed. So there's not quite like anything. It's like the best part of being in a hot tub and looking at the stars at night, just that relaxed sense of and wonderment. It was kind of astonishing. And when I was on the ceiling, I was seeing myself like, oh, this is trippy, but it was good. It didn't feel shocking at all. It's like, well, of course I'd see myself. I'm part of the room right now.
When we
But
did it for our practitioners, we needed to have people try it on.
yeah,
A lot of us ended up outside our houses.
yeah.
After a few minutes, if we did a 5-minute session of it, pretty soon you're in your backyard or in your front yard or
Well,
above
yeah,
your house.
that whole thing of being on the ceiling, that's what I tend to do when I'm lucid dreaming. And I didn't do what I realized that like, oh, this feels like when I lucid dream, because that's my approach. I'll float. I'll just go up, up, up. And so until I'm looking down and then I bounce on the ceiling like a balloon and then often I'll just float right through. So, but I didn't do that. It's like, okay, I know it feels like a lucid dream, but I'm not going to do that. But it totally felt like that. It felt like lucid dreaming in a really good space, safe space. Really nice.
Somebody said that it feels a lot like what happens when you're learning to remote view.
Yes.
I've never gone to that kind of class. I think Bill has. Have you done that before, remote classes for remote viewing?
Not classes, but
No.
I do remote viewing
Yeah.
because I'll do that with client sessions or just looking together at a situation through space and time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very similar. So yeah, I do this kind of thing, and like I said, it's similar to lucid dreaming. It really had that soul quality, totally similar to the point that it was like amazing.
It's a unique feeling, isn't it? It really
Yeah.
is something different when you put your attention there. And what happens is if you do it outside, you realize you can see farther and farther and farther. You practice when you're driving, pretty soon it looks like, those panoramic pictures that you can see. You're
Yes.
aware literally of everything that's going by here. And
Yes.
it seems like it's very stimulating for the brain, but super
Yes.
relaxing for the body.
Very relaxing for the body. I do tend to drive this way. My first experiences with this were with Kundalini. When I had a Kundalini awakening and I just spontaneously was having 360-degree vision outside of the house, like you're saying, and noticing this is a normal part of existence. But I don't have a process for taking people into it. It's nice to have that very clear process.
Yeah.
So it's sharing qualities of the Kundalini, just 360 view that I've had, and like you said, remote viewing and also lucid dreaming.
So, do you think there is a correlation between what the scientists are talking about in manifesting uh, in those peripheral states? Is that what you call it? Like, if you're thinking past, present, or future, you're kind of in your imaginal. It's a state, right? Would you say it's a?
Well, this gets into the difference between like the etheric field and the astral field. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
which is I know it's esoteric and it's like, oh boy, yeah, but
Well, that's okay though.
yeah, to me the realities they spring forth from the imaginal realm, from the it's kind of like the when you get into the awareness that you are a conscious creator, that you're not your thoughts and feelings, and you're aware of your you do the step back thing, kind of like with the room, but instead of physical space you're looking at mental space and you're noticing I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings. So you're doing similar to the room exercise, but you're stepping back and observing and then noticing what the heck am I must be some infinite immortal to be able to have this awareness that I can choose my response and my reaction to anything. So from that viewpoint, that's getting into this realm of astral creation, which is, I'm not advocating everybody take a deep plunge into it, because in fact, I would recommend get strong first, because what happens is you can run into anything. And so to do well on the astral, you need to have a command presence, which means that no matter what you face, you're cool, because you can challenge it right back. It looks you in the eyes and it's the abyss, and you're looking it in the eyes and you're the abyss. It's like, oh yeah, I see you and raise you. So if you've got that attitude, you're cool. I mean, that helps a lot. And then just to basically have radical optimism, that helps. And respect helps. So if you can come in strong in these areas, okay, maybe then it's okay to do that without guidance. But I'd really recommend people be careful there, because everything is there. And this is where reality comes from. That is the creation point for all of these realities. They're all there. It's very interdimensional. It activates us at all levels of our dimensional abilities, which we're playing with in our three-dimensional bodies through four-dimensional space. And then chakras, I think, are a very strong analogy to these dimensional levels of consciousness. And so if you notice, when in different daydreams, are you at fifth dimensional consciousness, looking at, at this chakra here, or sixth, or seventh, or eighth, or ninth, which level of conscious agency and dimensional consciousness are you employing right now? That's a big factor of all this. And so the astral that I'm talking about, it's kick ass, but it also seems woo woo, airy fairy, like nothing can be real there. That's nothing could be farther from the truth. All of the true magic, all of the true manifestations, where it's like, what the heck is that? That's a straight out miracle. That's coming from this astral realm, and we all have access to it. Again, I'm not recommending people dive into it. I'm talking about it, but that's something to really respect. It's sacred space. I think there's a reason that humans, we are going slowly. We're learning by baby steps. We're playing with remote viewing and astral travel, and the stuff we can do. But this other stuff can get kind of something else again.
What about the light spectrum? Something that occurred to me when we started doing this work and people started to see, and it happens in our work occasionally, but more rarely, where people will see blue lights in a specific eye position. But with this, it's more likely that people are going to see blue lights. So, on the periphery, or, if you move eyes one direction and let your periphery look to the other. But something that occurred to me is that the thought that we can see 1% of our light spectrum, humans in general, and if we could see 5% of our light spectrum, what's right around us, right here, might be shocking. So it occurred to me that maybe there's a possibility of seeing a little farther into the light spectrum, especially where we see colors turning on for people, with this other type of vision. How dogs seem to be able to see things that aren't there, and also babies a lot of times too. But as humans, as we get older, our vision comes in like this. We don't roll our eyes around. We're not googly eyed like little kids. We're not looking at everything. And also we're taught that our vision, what we see, is reality, here. But what do you think about that? That maybe there's an aspect of light spectrum that shifts.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see into the future too. Like some people experience that. They're constantly, like, I think you mentioned dogs. I think some animals are very psychic. Because if they know I'm a protector, then they know it's okay to be viewing 5, 10 seconds, 30 seconds into the future. And so they're going to notice something before there are any visual or auditory clues. And it's just straight out psychic. But people do it too. People do it too. We do it too. And when you know that you can and give yourself permission for that, how good can it get? It's my favorite affirmation, because it just opens all the doors in a very positive, productive way, and without the downside. And then we can start exploring, like, how many of these capabilities do we have? We have quite a few, I'm sure. Looks like when we look at quantum physics, these are potential quantum superpowers that we have access to.
It seems like it, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah. I've been hugging the conversation. You want to jump in, Bill? Do you have anything you want to tell us?
You know what? I am just enjoying myself. This is like watching the best movie. I, you know, I'm just absolutely fascinated uh, uh, by this whole bubble effect. I think you said Wagner bubble.
Eugene Wigner. Yeah. It's
Okay,
spelled like Wigner, but I'm pronouncing it the German way,
okay,
so
Wigner.
that's what, yeah.
So is it basically Wigner is basically saying we have our subjective reality, and truly it's subjective, and that like Liz is having her own experience, you're having your own experience, and I am having my own experience, and we think we're all like, well, we certainly are seeing the same thing, but we're not. We're actually seeing different things, and it's a creation of our particular. You had a way of putting it, but we call it kind of level of consciousness. But you called it something else, but basically consciousness.
Right. Yeah, this is exactly it. It's and I think I've mentioned before my love for this experiment that was testing this hypothesis. Eugene Wigner was asking the question, what would happen if there's an observer? He was, physicists, when they're at their best, they're troublemakers. They're basically raising a question no one wanted to look at. Like, oh no, don't ask that. If another observer observing the observer, oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
And so Wigner's saying it could go either way. And then there's a physicist who came up with the name Wigner bubbles. This is not Wigner's own term. This is the terminology of an Australian physicist, Eric Cavalcanti, taking a look at the whole thing. And he was basically saying what Wigner was really doing is he's creating this possibility that these different realities are part of our own subjective experience. And so it's amazing that we can have an agreed upon reality. And it's partially, this is a conversation to have in light of the findings from the physics experiments published in 2019, conducted at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland, and then in Vienna, Austria, where 6 entangled photons were set up in the double slit experiment apparatus, and basically 2 observational devices at the same place, same time, witnessed completely different things. And these are trusted observational devices with completely different observations. This is what Wigner would have said. Yes, I would have predicted this. And the troublemaker, looking at if Erwin Schrödinger wasn't bad enough of a troublemaker. I'm saying troublemaker, in a fun way. They're good for us because they're inviting us to take a look at what we presume that all of reality is one objective physical thing that's always the same. And those of us here today, we suspect strongly it's not, based on what we've seen. We've seen enough things to show, wait a minute, there seem to be subjective realities. And then if you're in the role of a caregiver or a healer, someone or a teacher, someone who's assisting others to open up what's possible for them, well, that's where things get exciting. And we can start to really see the opportunities here to invite people into maybe a more optimistic, positive reality. And the term I was talking about was levels of conscious agency, because conscious agency is where you combine your ability to pay attention with your intentionality. When you've got both, then it's on, and it's like you're ready to go.
Yeah, paying attention to your intention, that giving that intention your constant focus changes everything. It reminds me of something we're always talking about. We do a lot of work with people in relationships, and we'll change the way one person feels about the relationship, their neurological setup around it, or their automatic reaction, right? To their past experiences that around that relationship and all the other relationships related to it. And what happens is one person, one half of the relationship, has this radical shift. They get to where they feel neutral, they see all the other perspectives, and they go home, and dang it if the other person isn't radically changed as well. It looks like a massive timeline shift. I always think of you, Cynthia, when I talk about this, but it really is. It's like you took a left turn on your timeline and now you're in a new one, and there's a different person in your house, right?
Yes.
So people are always asking, how in the world does this happen? And I really think there's a very physical explanation for it. I always say that relationships are two nervous systems having a conversation. I bring everything I've experienced and my nervous system set up for threat assessment with me. And all of those experiences and all the opinions that my nervous system holds about is this safe or not safe, the strongest ones fill the field around me. They have mass, right? You can reach out and feel them. We've done that many times. We do it all the time, actually, in our work, and change in the field. But we know that right here, it's like, I think about like a cluster of grapes, do you remember the Fruit of Loom guy that would wear the grape costume and all the grapes are right here? Think about that. So our partner shows up and they have all the things that they've experienced. Their whole life comes with them in this field around their body. And it's like their own cluster of grapes. And those fields hit each other long before we do. If, like HeartMath says, those fields are 6 to 8 feet, and some of ours are much bigger, and they're filled with these little, bombs of our emotion and our opinion and our perspective. And they have one that matches, and those are the people we meet up with in our relationships, right? They hit each other first, and we have, an explosion. I do this, you do that. We're in a calibrated loop. I say this, so you say that, and we're round and round. And it's our automated responses are having that conversation for the 1000th time, right? Where your logical mind is thinking, why am I having this conversation again? Why can't they hear what I'm saying? I'm not saying that, I'm saying this, right? Very frustrating. But when one person comes home and all of that is gone, there's nothing to push back against. And now I see you for who you really are. And now you have nothing to fight me against. You have nothing to push back. And so now we really have entered into a new state, what appears very much like a new reality, and I believe it is. But I think there's also this physical component. So what you're saying about the bubbles, so now that pair is in a new relationship, a new neurological relationship, a new spiritual relationship, a new conscious relationship. And then now their kids are in that bubble too. The kids are the observer of that bubble. Bill has a classic story where the kids say, Mommy, I like what our family's like now after one of these sessions. So now the kids are observing their bubble and they're different. And now those kids who are maybe bullying at school because of the tension in the house, now they're different and they're different. So one of these quantum changes in one human's field, I think, has the potential to change probably 1,000 people. I think we're really in contact with about 1,000 people, including, the people we interact with at the grocery store. Yes. And I'm not a scientist, don't play one on TV, but that very much sounds like a quantum shift to me.
I think you're right. It is. And it's the core of synchronicity too, and things where people wonder, how is this such a lucky day? Dr. Bernard Beitman, he talks about this with the psychosphere. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphogenic fields. So we've got lots of people who are noticing there's something going on. It's physical. We can feel it. It's palpable, but it seems to start in that shared space, which we make a change. We think it's private, but somehow everybody knows.
Right?
Somehow. Yeah.
They can see it almost.
They can feel it. Yeah. And I've had this happen where I've walked into a building and just, I think, in a meditative, relaxed state, and people tend to assume I'm in charge of something. And I've seen paramedics were leaving, and there was a very sort of the gentleman in charge of this recreational center just looked like he looked just at a loss, and he saw me and he brightened and stood up like an inch taller, like, oh, you're here. And I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
Not that I mean, I'm not in charge of the recreation center.
But you probably had an answer, right? You probably
did.
He
felt the energy field. He felt
the
energy field. And then he's just asking, like, this Asian gentleman, he collapsed. He refused paramedics. They came, someone called 911. He refused all help, and he's sitting here. And I said, well, do you know his name? And the rec center guy said, no, much to my surprise. Like, what? No? And, like, hello, say hello to the gentleman. Anyway, he was carrying a water bottle, and I suggested make sure you stay hydrated. And I told him the first thing I said is I wouldn't have gone with him and either. I'd be checking my energy, like what's going on. And he just looked so relieved. It was a delightful experience. Anyway, long story short, he was fine. But the funny thing is, it's just that I walked in and it was my energy field. It's like, oh, good, you're here. And that's not the first time that's happened. And it's just, there's something going on here where people read the energy field and they know, thank God you're here. Like, really?
Yeah, I get
Okay,
it. I
what's
can
going on?
feel, yeah, I can feel that your energy is clear enough to see and take charge of the situation. I tell this funny story. When I work in a cogno movement session, I probably look crazy because I'm smiling the whole time, right? First of all, I'm a nerd and I'm so fascinated by what the neurology is doing. But I also know that there's a solution to whatever they've showed up in my office for, and we'll find it. We'll see it, we'll change it, and you'll leave better. So it's very, and Bill says this, he's always energized by a session, you know. So I'll leave my office. And at the end of a day, you know how it is working with people, and you know, probably you look like you're molting. I'm sure my hair's a wreck and my scarf's on sideways. I don't know, my makeup's probably under my eye. And a lot of times my office is downtown and I'll go to the grocery store before I come home. And almost every time I'm in the grocery store and will have people stop me and say, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." And I think, really? Or you are absolutely glowing. And at first I thought, what is happening? I realized that I am just radiating
Yes,
all the possibilities, right?
yes,
All the amazing things. And so a lot of times I do it on purpose. So on the weekends, we go shopping or whatever with my husband, and I hold myself in that state, and people will stop me and say, "Oh my God, you're
yes.
so beautiful." And after a while, he'd be like, "Okay, you need to stop. Enough is enough." But it's not that I'm, like strikingly gorgeous. It's that they're feeling the energy, the radiation of that high state of love and of possibility. At least that's my
Yes.
opinion. That's what I'm telling myself about it. But again and again and again and again, it happens. And it speaks to me of these Wigner bubbles. Like in the bubble surrounding me, that's what people perceive.
Yeah, you're holding a high vibratory state when I feel your energy. And it's like you said, you're open to these optimistic opportunities. And instead of collapsing your little bubble in and getting it dark and shriveled, it's very expansive, very bright, very benevolent, and very positive for everybody concerned. So
Yeah, and in those
it's
states, people want to talk about exciting things. They don't, hey, have you heard about the latest political? They want to talk about how beautiful it is outside, or have you seen that the flowers are coming up, or wow, that's an amazing color you have on. You know what I mean? Like people want to talk about something lighter. They want to talk about something positive. They seem to be less likely in their own funk.
yes, it's so true. Yeah, I love it. And I see it with animals too, people as well. I get the same thing happens to me, like your hair is so beautiful, or you're so
Yeah.
beautiful. Or one person just almost leaned out of their car windows. I was like, what's going on? But they were just like waving and beaming like a maniac, and I don't know who they were. And it was just, it was the same thing again. Like they couldn't say it because they're driving away, but like, yeah, so funny.
So Cynthia, your books are about reality shifting.
Yes.
If you had to pick one way to shift reality, would that be it? Just in general, is radiating that high level of, I don't know what you, in your vernacular, is it love? Is it compassion? What would you say it is? What would be your one pick?
It really would be to get everyone inspired to want to ask how good can it get, just to choose that because no matter where they are, it's going to get better. And, it's such a great experience to witness it firsthand. So it has to be a choice, obviously. And
Yeah.
yeah, people, if they don't know it's a choice, then, or they think that's silly, or how can that help? Well, go ahead and try it.
It has to be real though, right? It has to be a genuine,
Yes.
feeling. Bill and I work in sensation,
Yes.
and that state has a particular sensation. And for each of us, it radiates from a different a zone in our body. For me, it's in almost like where my collarbones are, is where it radiates. Bill talks about it being in his belly button, right, Bill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good if it's coming down from there. That's a power spot. Right now, mine will move around. Right now, it's coming a little below my belly button. It's like because
Interesting.
it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, come on now. It's like we need this. That's how I'm feeling it. Like we need this. So but I feel it with all of my being. It's
Yeah.
just like this rush of it's like champagne bubble excitement, like woo.
Yeah.
But all of this makes me, just kind of gives me some other thoughts. And if, like, let's say, if I was to kind of simplify, um, the wave function, right, the quantum wave,
Yeah.
right, would be as if what the brain can see, that that, and then the particle is bank, it it came into reality. Like this is hard. I see it. I feel it. That is your where we have collapsed the wave function down into the physical. And it's much, and I guess it's more than just this, brain seeing peripheral type thing. It is all the senses. What do you tell us about?
The-
Tell
Yeah, the
me.
wave fu yeah, the wave function is more like uncertainty. It's more like that quote that I read at the beginning. It's more that feeling that of indefiniteness, like you're not sure. It's not even that you're looking at something and remote viewing it and seeing it for sure. No, it's very nebulous. It's in a wave state. It's a feeling. It's it's very free. It's extremely loose and free. And I got a feeling of that in my body during the exercise that Liz was guiding me through. It was just that state of relaxing, like feeling like even as I'm looking at things with certainty, and yes, it's there, but also feeling the freedom that anything at all could happen, and just and being really relaxed with that. So that uncertainty, if that's our power, and this is where when I read the quote, it didn't sound like it was the power spot because they were talking about conflict, ambiguity. They said confusion. Okay, so me, the radical optimist, I would revise, revise, revise. I would say instead of conflict, I'd say, communication. Instead of ambiguity is fine, that's fine. Confusion, I'd say, you know, just like realization. It's like things are coming in and out, but you don't know yet. Uncertainty, that's fine. But I think the scientists deserve credit for what they were illuminating here, that this is really a psychological state of uncertainty. Now, humans in most of our Western modern age societies tend to we tend to say that's the dark side, like we don't want uncertainty, we don't want, and that's where conflict shows up. Ambiguity, confusion, and uncertainty. But what if we could make friends with the ambiguity and the uncertainty? What if the unknown could be something wonderful? And that's the opportunity. It really does feel like the unknown. So if you're seeing things and you don't know what you're seeing, you're in the wave function. If you see things and it's pretty clear, you can actually create from there, especially if you're in that astral realm and you're coming from a very high level of conscious agency. This is what master magicians are doing, what shamans are doing. This is what reality creators are doing. They're commanding it. They're saying we need this reality and we can bring it in, especially when you're all fully aligned. You need it and you're coming from those high levels. That's a powerhouse that you've just activated, and then you can just feel it when it clicks. It's like the
Yeah.
perfect session, and your person is like they've got it. They go home
Yeah.
and you just know their whole life has just changed. You know it because you can feel it, like that just clicked. Yeah.
It makes me think how interesting it is that probably the scientists that you're talking about was probably okay to talk about uncertainty and the negative side, because if you talk about the positive side, well, now you're talking about manifesting. It's okay in our society to look down the barrel of some crap that's about to happen. It's okay to be certain of the terrible thing that's coming next, right? We're all fine with that. like, if you keep going down that path, you're going to end up in jail, or, right? We can talk about that. But if we talk about uncertainty in the positive, well, now it's woo woo, airy fairy. If I'm 100% certain, and there is this physical setup, like you said, where you feel absolutely calm and certain and stable, and you can, in that imaginal, like you're talking about in your mind, know for certain that what is coming in your timeline next is that very lovely thing that I like and that I choose. That, that's manifesting, that's airy fairy, that's witchcraft, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really okay to talk about the positive, even though realistically it's the exact same thing. It's just easier for most people to feel the negative sensations to make that happen, the negative creation. It's harder for people to understand and try on and experience the physical setup of certainty for the positive, for manifesting. But to me, they're exactly the same thing, just a different neurological or focused emotional setup, focused mental setup.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that
We,
you've hit the nail on the head there. Go ahead, Bill.
if we were to have you to, within, 5 sentences or so, uh, just speak to that from the scientific point of view of this wave function and access to it through this technique that Liz just walked you through, and what's going on there. And as it goes from here to here.
So bringing it back into regular
Yeah, as
experience.
things come from that wave function collapse down into physical reality.
Yeah, for me, that's that remote, it is like remote viewing, lucid dreaming. But it's not yet what I would, when I get into that astral realm, it's a different experience than this even. So that's where the command level comes in. So it wasn't yet quite there, but it was getting there. It's like that's the right, like those are the right steps. And then the next thing that I would do, if you want to start seeing, when I talk about the astral, that's like the command level of reality. That's where we call things in. We're basically saying this is needed now. And that's how I bring it in. It's like, okay, and I can also decline. I can feel like there's an emergency alert and I'm some sort of emergency response network. And I'm basically part of the no-go team. I'm looking at, is this really in the best interest of all humanity? No. And so I can put a stop on, I have helped to stop things that never came into being. So I have no proof that they ever would have, but that's okay with me. I'm part of the fail-safe network. I think we all can be. And I tend to do, so I'm not just an optimist. I'll also do like, heck no. Like, I don't care how many people wanted to do what, I'm not even going to say what, we're not doing that. And so, or the earth having a certain disaster or other, I know that we can help stop those too. So the room experience and bringing it back in, I'm pretty familiar with that. That is how I drive when I drive the car. That's how I do that sort of thing a lot because I'm familiar with it. But when you're talking about selecting realities, I get into a slightly different zone there. So it's similar, very similar. But for me to select another reality, I actually do jump into my astral self. And it's, again, something I don't recommend everybody do. And you might wonder why not. I'm not going to go into why not. It's just, if it's not something that they naturally go into, probably better not to do it is generally a good advice. So if you're naturally feeling like, oh, I'm in there, okay, good, then you're strong. You can't stay there if you're not strong there. So, but that to me is where the reality comes in. That's the one that we draw from, where we have a command presence or not, that you're working with other beings there. It's a very active, buzzing area. Oh, I didn't mean to get into that all at the last minute here, but that to me, when you start calling in other realities, we can glimpse them. The periphery thing, the expansion thing. I love the words you're using there. This is good. And getting people to the awareness that they have a bigger reality.
I really think that's the kind of the first step for people. Um, the main thing we began using this for was relaxation to help the body fully relax. And in with kids with autism, they feel as though everything's coming at them at the same time,
Right.
even their own thoughts, even their own physical impulses. So we wanted to find a way for the physical body to relax, and it really is fantastic at that. And it takes about 30 seconds, which is huge. But I think the second piece is, and which is the first step in being able to access different realities, is expanding that bubble, feeling that expansiveness and the awareness. So many people find that it's fascinating. Oh my God, I just realized I'm aware of what's all the way over here, almost behind me, and what's all the way over here, almost behind me, and I'm not looking. It's like we come from this tight, holding ourselves tense, keeping our eyes here, focused on reality, holding on to it, with as tight as we can with white knuckles, to actually reaching our energy out and beyond. And I think for you and I and Bill, it's a normal thing. I mean, at
Yeah.
least you and I, Cynthia, we were born with that.
Yeah.
Other people had to learn it, but when a person has that experience, it may be the first step into actually even an understanding that they can begin to reach beyond their own borders and have an effect on what's there, or even just glimpse it.
That's really a good point. I think that's great. And it gives them some sense of that when I keep using that term conscious agency, but
Yeah.
that combination of attention and intention for some of these people, like the autistic people you're talking about, that's so important when they previously couldn't coordinate things. And suddenly they're relaxed enough. And like you said, the nervous system is starting to grow in productive new ways that didn't have connections at all before. This is very, very good.
Yeah, for them, it's almost I don't even know if it's possible that it's the opposite, but it's almost the opposite, where it brings them into a focused, concentrated nervous system that can handle the things that need to happen, now in that focus area where they
Right.
didn't have it. They didn't have the ability to bring their eyes,
No,
right here, the
yes.
focus right here.
The people I've known who are on the spectrum and very neurodiverse are extremely psychic typically. And so they're very easy for me to communicate with, send and receive instantly with, and just keep a conversation going constantly. They often want to be on the periphery if they're in a class. They don't want to
Yeah.
be in the class. I honor that. And with sometimes you have to do special things for these people because they want to come in the room and flip all the lights on or off.
Yeah.
And so, and if I was using a classroom that had music stands, that was a nightmare. So I'd come into the room half an hour early and just maintain the space before the autistic kids came in, because I don't want them flipping all the lights off. I know they like the dark, but then people
Mhm.
can trip on the stairs, and there can be problems. So anyway, but what I found effective in my limited experience of this experience, teaching autistic kids, was they just thrive when they get the opportunity to be respected on the periphery when they can participate, and so maybe they're closing their eyes, but they can hear my voice and they know what's going on. We do meditation, that helps. Working with mind, body, spirit coordination, that helps. Every little bit helps. And even if they're not doing something, they are in it. And I know they're in it because they're so psychic. They're
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
Actually, Colby, our practitioner, who is the speech therapist who works with these kids, she said to me, you have to be careful what you're thinking
Oh gosh, they
because
they know
they
everything.
will,
They're right there.
yeah,
They're in
they,
it.
they know
Yeah.
what you're thinking and they'll
Yeah.
respond to it.
Yes.
So I knew that going in, that I had to look at them with that radiating
Yes.
sensation and feeling.
And grounded. Coming
Yeah, and
grounded.
very grounded. So
Yes.
when I was working with Owen, the first one that we tried the square with, I had that sense. I thought, I wonder if I am holding him in my bubble, this high vibration. And that's what made the change. Because I noticed in going into the situation, there was a lot of stress. There's always 3 or 4 people in the room. All of them are quite stressed because they don't know what's going to happen next. They're guarding, they've all been hit, or right.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get 3 good minutes of a session. It's so important to everyone, that this human gets the help they need and is able to communicate. But, you know, like a lot of times the parents are there and the speech therapist, there's usually two, and everybody looks so stressed, right? So that's the first thing I did, was relax myself and radiate that energy. So I don't know, maybe it's really my energy that lifted him. We discovered after lots of experimentation that it probably is a little part, but mostly it's not. Mostly it's reaching into that space around them and asking them to look with it really makes the body relax.
But I want to give you credit because you came in grounded, you came in
Yeah.
energized, and without that, forget about it. I don't think there's no practitioner, if they're not grounded and not energized, it's not going to work so well. So
Well, I
please
made that
don't just,
observation, you know,
yeah,
how
don't.
you guys all look so stressed. We've got to shift that, because if they're so sensitive, they're reading you, they're just bouncing off of your stress. And it gets bigger and
Exactly.
bigger. Back to that, the bubbles, you know,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
running into each other's stress and just creating more. Sorry, Bill, you were going to say something.
Oh, just to validate what you guys are both saying. The work of one of our practitioners, Colby, who the kids started communicating after this work, and one of the communications, the question was asked, "Hey, why don't you type to each other? The other autistic kids, why don't you communicate?" And it's like,
Why bother?
we already know everything we're thinking. I know
Exactly.
what they're doing. I know what they're thinking.
We don't
Exactly.
have to.
Yeah, they don't have to.
They don't have to, which is very, it's that kind of next level.
They are next level.
That can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still valuable. It's good to show them that there's still things to learn, even in, it's kind of like dropping down into this physical reality. Like, come on back down, you guys. Come
Yeah.
on
Well,
down. You
what I discovered, you know, working with those 10 different clients, and I've heard this said a lot of times, you know, they're next level or they're the next generation. There's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that goes with that very particular physical setup. Um, you know, their bodies are in pain. This is something nobody knew. But the tension in their muscles, their bodies are just in pain. The suffering around being so desperately misunderstood. So I noticed that a lot of the kids will have baby books. You know, they're in their 30s, but they have baby things.
yes.
So as an outside observer, I have to ask all the questions. And I said, why don't you have them read something that's a little more, we know they can read, we know they can write, something a little more age appropriate. And they said, oh, no, they like this. It keeps them safe. It's familiar. So I said, forgive me, but I'm going to ignore that and do something else. And so I started to talk to them about things that I had been giving clues that they were interested in on their level at their age. And again, as we were doing this work, I saw another down regulation and the eyes moved right toward me like, did you just see me? Are you actually talking to me? So, like with Owen, I said, Owen, I understand that you would like to be a minister and that you'd like to go to university, and right across the street from where he lives is a Brenathan University. And I said, where would you like to go? And he typed Brenathan University. Interesting. And I said, well, I'm interested in theology as well. What interests you specifically about theology? What would you like to study? And he sat for a minute and he did the very typical thinking face. You know, finger to chin, eyes kind of up. And I wasn't sure if he was going to answer because this is very early in this him communicating more fluidly. And he said, I would like to study about respect and gratitude. I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the building, you know. And then we talked about, you know, a scientific method moving forward in the work that we were doing. And would he be willing to participate? Absolutely, yes. I asked him if he'd be willing to let us name method after him at that point. And I said, can we call it the Owen method? And he said, no. I said, no. And I got to thinking, and his mom said he's very interested in the scientific method. I said, oh, would this then be called the Simmons method? Yes. That sounds more scientific to him, right?
Mhm.
You know, so the importance of meeting them where they're at and being heard for the human that they really are gets passed over for all of their problems that they have, the physical issues that they have. And there's so much static and input and sensation that they're picking up stress from all of us, that all of that sort of goes somewhere else. And what you see is a very infantile acting creature that is not any of that. You know, that's this deep, wise, intelligent, articulate human. So, you know, I just want to point that out, that even though we do say, you know, their next level, there's just a lot of suffering that I think could be alleviated with more of these methods. And what Colby found after is that that's 100% true. We have much more happy, thriving people now that she's working with. So
that's good.
Before we end, I wanted to ask, I've noticed something. I think Liz and myself actually talked for hours, you know, on a road trip about this. And that is the instability that that back in the day, you know, we're probably in the neighborhood of the same age, you know, things were fairly fixed, you know. Captain Crunch was Captain Crunch.
Oh, yes.
You know, when you songs didn't change, you know, the Mandela effect really there that wasn't a thing. But we've noticed that everything is completely unstable. Things are being redefined. Words that meant something now are completely meaning something else, redefined as the opposite or watered down. And this is going from geopolitical right down to our cereal boxes, you know? And so why, if you, from your point of view,
Yeah.
you know, why is that? And also, is this really an opportunity, because it's so malleable, that we can easily create a new reality?
Absolutely. Yeah, to me, this is an example of we are in pain, like these autistic kids that are in pain and nobody knew. They need to reach that next level. So we're, as a species, we're going through growing pains as well. I don't need to name all the stuff going on. I just, anything you name, you know, whether it's the weather, the politics, the economics, et cetera, et cetera. All of these are threshold points of pain points for humanity right now. And along comes something basically looks to me like a toolkit. Looks like this is the quantum superpower toolkit, where would you like to absolutely change your reality? Yes. And so it's giving us first, just like with personal reality shifts, personal Mandela effects, we can experience that we can manifest a parking space. You know, we can do little things. We can take something from losing a sock in the dryer and moving it into conscious awareness with attention and intentionality and start manifesting or choosing how to change timelines. Now we're doing it collectively as all of humanity. You might think, boy, humans need to work together better. Okay, maybe so. In the meantime, we're getting some really crazy shifts, like the one you mentioned with Captain Crunch. I remember that cereal. Now it's Cap'n with a little hyphen. That looks terrible. You know, it's
done that in the, when did Captain Crunch come along? Probably the 80s.
Oh no, it was there in the 70s.
Was it their 70s? We wouldn't have said Captain. That wouldn't have been a thing. Captain would have been Captain Crunch. Otherwise, nobody would have known what that meant. Right?
That's
Does that
right.
make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
It just seems weird. And it's just like so many of these other weird things that then people assume, well, they rebranded, they made it more hip, more current. No, it was never changed. And you mentioned Fruit of the Loom. People remember the cornucopia, and it never had a cornucopia. And people think, well, they changed the logo. No, they never changed that logo. So, so it starts like that. It starts like with socks in the dryer and they go missing. You can't find your keys in the house. That's like Fruit of the Loom. That's like Captain Crunch and all these others. So we notice it that way. It's kind of disturbing. It gets our attention. Like, what's going on? And then together, can we collectively move things? Absolutely, we can. You know, this is what to me it looks like it's for. It's basically the toolkit. Like, here you go. Humanity, are you ready? And it's our time to say yes. And is it pain? Have we been going through pain? Yes. I think unless we went through growing pains, we wouldn't feel like we needed this toolkit. We'd
Right.
say, we don't need it. So, like the autistic kids that use telepathy, why bother typing when you're telepathic?
So
They've
true.
already they've made that jump. Now humanity, we need to make a jump. We've hit our pain point. Let's go, you know, and let's find out how good it can get. I don't think we need to suffer a whole lot. I'd say how good can it get? Let's instead of, you know, let's go through as much. I'm not even going to say the alternatives.
Yeah.
Forget that.
That's why
Are we?
our ebook is called Suffering is Optional, because I think if humanity can get to that place, I
Yes.
think everyone, so many people, not everyone anymore, because we don't, and lots of other people don't, but a lot of people really believe in suffering. It's necessary. You know, our religions, uh, populate our brains, our fields with that idea,
It doesn't
our,
work in the astral, though. Believe me, that's the wrong attitude for the astral. So anyone feeling like I want to go in the astral, if you're in that
and their
mindset,
suffering.
don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go there.
Yeah, because you're going to find you're going to find your match. I think that's the big thing with manifesting. If people could understand, if they're emitting suffering, that's the only thing the universe can deliver is the match to it. It's just it's not there's a source of suffering. It's just that that idea is out there and floating around, and you find it. You find what you're looking for. If you could understand that equally, the joyful expectation of something wonderful finds its match.
Right.
If you can find that state of joyful expectation and love and radiance and consciousness and beauty, those are the things that start to show up more and more and more and more.
It's also important to be able to take a stand to respect yourself enough not to go into the suffering, the evil, to be able to take a stand, look evil straight in the face and say no. And if people can't do that, don't go into that astral. You know, that's all I'm saying. And I know I'm warning that I'm talking about it because we're talking about where do these realities come from? Well, they come from the astral, the imaginal.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even not in the outer astral. My daughter and I started this practice of, people around you start to get sick,
Yeah.
right? And then, you go to bed and you start to notice that little tickle in the throat or the sinusy headache. You're like, oh, dang it, I'm going to be sick in the morning, right? So we decided to be like, oh no, I forgot. I'm fine in the morning. Oh, I forgot I'm totally better. And shockingly, that's exactly what happens. Totally fine in the morning, totally
Mhm.
better 10 minutes later, or you've forgotten about it entirely. And 3 days later, you think, oh, I thought I was getting sick. Oh, wait, I got to remind myself again, totally better. That to me feels like it's right here. It's just right. We
Yes.
don't necessarily have to reach into the astral or beyond for that. It's one of
No.
those things you can remember. Oh, yeah, I'm getting princess parking today. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no traffic on the freeway today.
I think I
And on
mentioned
and
that in
on.
Quantum Jumps, the one about getting, thinking that you're getting sick and reminding yourself, no, I'm just getting better. And also the one about not feeling like maybe I didn't get enough sleep and like I got
Mhm.
plenty of sleep. Yeah. These are really easy, good ones that people can work with.
Yeah, a-
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, I had one more thing, Cynthia, I wanted to ask you about. It was quick. Is there anything else you want to ask her about before we go, Bill, so I can remember it?
Yeah, well, actually, just confirming, you know, um, is that do you see like an acceleration of the instability, like as time goes on,
Yeah.
even more and more malleable, or these changes? Is this because you're involved in the Mandela?
Yes, we're in the thick of it right now. I think this will be the apex year. It's kind of like this is going over the waterfall this year at the end, by the end of this year. So the end of 2024, just looking at all of the different indicators that show where we are. So this is the rapids. There's a convergence of timelines. So the reason if people are good at standing strong in the astral, we need them there because, and they know it already, because we're the team that's basically saying as the timelines converge, these are the good ones we're choosing for everybody. And then the ones we don't want, we're saying, no, no, we don't need those. Thank you. We declined. Thanks for the invitation. So it, but this should be hopefully smoothing out and getting a lot calmer into 2025. But this is going to be something else. But again, how good can it get, right? So
Beautiful.
Yeah, what other possibilities are there that are greater, better, happier, more joyful? They're all there as well,
yes,
equally.
yes.
And I think
And
that's the hardest thing to convince people of because they believe there's a source of something negative all the time coming at them. But
that's
I
a
think, a greater source of possibility and better.
there's power in the unknown. And that's what our invitation is to start dancing with joy, with the ambiguity, with the unknown, with the unexpected, and just say, like, "Oh, that's great. This could be fun." So loving it, even like, yeah, I love the unknown because that's where all the possibilities are. But that's the reason I keep talking about the astral today too, because we're in the collective. It's coming together. It's a little different right now than it's ever been before. So I am talking about it. So
There, an 85-year-old man today, Bill's client, was his wife, and they were outside chatting, and he was, kind of stayed behind and was chatting with me, and he said, I think we're in a place right now where he was talking about our work, work like yours, where it's all becoming possible. And he kind of waited expectantly to see if I thought he was weird or not. And I said, absolutely. We feel that way too. It's becoming available.
yes,
And just like what happened when I was working with Owen that day, if I was quiet and reached for another possibility, a greater and greater and greater one is there. But for me, it all depends on whether or not I'm willing to reach for it, to look for it. And I think the more of us who are aware that the possibilities exist, those
yes.
really cool ones beyond anything we've even imagined,
Gosh, yes.
the more of us that do that, the more of
Mm.
those super cool possibilities that we can't even think of right now start to come into reality.
They absolutely do. And we see that with the Mandela effect, like the improved locations of the organs in the body, the heart moving to the center, the kidneys moving up under the rib cage, more protected. So all this body temperature dropping a little bit, like lots of improvements are happening just instantly to billions of people on the planet. And
That's
this is,
so.
it's so good. How good can it get?
How good can it get?
How good can it get?
Oh
Okay,
my
you guys, I
God.
think that's a mic
Thank
drop right
you.
there.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. And this is such a great conversation today. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Liz. I really appreciate the work you do. And I just love who you are. So
Oh, and back at you. We love who you are. It's always so fun. It's always such a fun expectation getting ready to talk to you because I know I'm going to think about things completely differently after chatting with you, but not just completely differently, just happier as
I think
well.
I think
More joyful.
we're like kids. I like playing with you guys. And I mean that in
Honestly,
the best way.
I wish more people would think about the kind of work that we all do as play.
Yep.
That's what it feels like to us. When we're in it and doing it, that's why I grin like an idiot when I'm working because it's a play. It's like, oh, what's going to happen next? And oh, what if I try that? Or what if I look at it over here? Right.
Yes.
And I think what you're saying is so true that it all feels very, very malleable. There doesn't ever seem to be one answer to me. There's probably 1,000 different ones. And I always think, shiny things, which one do I choose?
Adorable. Love you so much.
Love you too. All right, you guys, you ready to say goodbye, Bill?
Let's hit the stop record.
Okay.
Yeah.